We're learning the third Sikha on Parsha Shlach and Chelek Gimel on page 104. The shir today is being learned Lila Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. From Pasik Vayinasu Oisizeh Esa Pa'amim. In the Pasik of this week's Parsha, this is after the story of the Meraglim, when Hashem says that He wants to wipe out, God forbid, all of Klal Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu asks for forgiveness, and Hashem actually says, Salachti kidvarecha, I will forgive the Yidden. But then the pasuk continues and says that Hashem says that the Yidden have tested me 10 times. Learning up Chazal, so Chazal learn out from here, as asara nisyonis nisu avisenus HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'midbar. The Yidden tested Hashem 10 times while they were in the desert. In the asara nisyonis, regarding what are exactly these 10 times that the pasuk is referring to, gefindt men kamadeis, we find a few opinions, umehem, and from those opinions are as follows. Aleph in Masechta Erechim. One opinion is in the Gemara in Erechim where it says, Shnayim b'yam, twice they tested Hashem by the yam. Shnayim b'mayim, twice was regarding water. Shnayim b'man, twice was in connection to the man that the Yidden got in the Midbar. Shnayim b'slav, twice was regarding the slav bird that flew and Yidden had meat in the Midbar. Achas be'egel, one more time was when they made a golden calf. And va'achas b'midbar paran, one here in midbar paran, which refers to the chet of the Meraglim when they refused to go into Eretz Yisrael. Und wie the Gemara is noch mefaret, the Gemara there then spells out what are these 10 times. Shnayim b'yam, the twice that they tested Hashem by the Yam Suf. Achas b'yiride, one was when they were descending into the Yam Suf, and they complained and said, Hamabli and Kvanim b'Mitzrayim, are there not enough burial spots for us in Mitzrayim that we're here, we're going to die here? V'achas ba'aliyah, once when they came out of the Yam Suf, when they were saved on the other side, and they said, Kishem sha'anu oile mitzad zeh, kach Mitzrayim oile mitzad acher. Just like we were saved here on this side, the Egyptians may have also been saved on another side. So they complained yet again. Shnayim b'mayim, twice in connection with water. V'mara, in the place of Mara, they complained that they have no water. U'berefidim, and in Refidim as well, they complained that they have no water. Shnayim b'man, twice they tested Hashem regarding the man. One was al teitzu. Hashem says on Shabbos, do not go out and collect the man, and there were those that went out to look for the man even on Shabbos. Al teisiru, Hashem commanded that they should not leave over the man from one day to the next. Vayisiru, and there were those that did leave over from one day to the next. And Shnayim b'slav, twice when they complained and they wanted the meat and they got the slav bird, slav rishai, which the Parshas B'Shalach, there's the story about what they wanted, the meat that's related in Parshas B'Shalach, Uslav Sheni, the Parshas Ba'aloischa. And then this came up yet again in last week's Parsha, in Parshas Ba'aloischa, when they complained again that they want meat. And then Egel, the golden calf, Umidba Paran, which is the Meraglim, as mentioned. That's the explanation in the Gemara Erechin for these 10 times that they tested Hashem. Beis, another opinion, in Ovis der Abnossen state, as the Asar Nisyonis Zenen, the 10 times they tested Hashem are as follows. Cheta Egel, sinned with making the golden calf. When they were thirsty for water, and this refers to the time when this happened in Refidim. Himra al Yamsuf, they complained when they were by the Yamsuf. Meraglim, and then Taflu al Aman, they complained about the man that they got, that they're sick and tired of this man. This actually refers to what happened in Parshas Chukas. Machloikta shel Kairach, the argument of Kairach against Moshe. Slav, when they complained about meat and they got the slav bird. Und die drei Nisyonis, and then there was another 3 times that they tested Hashem, b'taveira, u'b'masa, u'b'kivris atayva. What are they? Taveira is misaynanim. In last week's Parsha, when the Yidden were complaining about their traveling, that it's going too slow, and so on. B'masa, b'lekita saman, this is regarding the collection of the man, that they didn't listen to Hashem's commands. And Kivris Hataiva is Slav Sheni. Kivris Hataiva is also in last week's Parsha. This is the second time when Yidden complained that they want meat and they got the Slav. Late that day, so now if we analyze the difference between the Gemara and what it says in Avos der Abnossen, so here, according to the opinion of Avos der Abnossen, we're including here Chetmis Einenim, that when the Yidden sinned, when they complained, in last week's Parsha, which the Gemara does not mention, Maisa Kairach, the story with the argument in the fight of Kairach, on Toflu al-Aman, and this day they complained about the man, which is in Parshas Chukas. Uleidach werden nit gerechnet, denn es seien von Mayim b'Mara. In Oster Abnassen, we don't count when they complained for water in Mara. Ein Nisayim b'Yam. One of the times that are mentioned in Gemara that they complained by the Yam Suf is not mentioned in Avos Rab Nosson. And Ein Nisayim b'Man. And one of the times that they did not listen to the mitzvah by the man, that's not mentioned as well. Because it only counts once that they tested Hashem by the Yam Suf, and once they tested Hashem with the man. Gimel, a third opinion, the Rambam, the Rambam, in his Pirish on the Mishnayos, in the Mishnah of Pirkei Avos, so he counts the 10 tests as follows. Yam Suf, when they complained by the Yam Suf, Mara, they complained for water by Mara. Bakasha Saman b'midbasin, when they were in midbasin, they requested food and they asked for the man in midbasin. And then Al Teisiru, when they had the mitzvah not to leave over from the man. Al Teitzu, and they shouldn't go out looking for the man b'yom HaShabbos. So as you see here, according to the Rambam, there are 3 times they tested Hashem in connection with the man. Mayim b'Refidim, and then when they wanted water again in Refidim, Ma'isa Egel, the golden calf. Tav Eira, which is Misainanim, when the Yidden complained when they were traveling in last week's parsha in Baloischa. Kivrei Sataiva, Slav. Then when over there as well in last week's parsha, the Yidden then complained that they want meat. They got the Slav bird. On Chet HaMeraglim, the final time here when they tested Hashem with the story of the Meraglim. So again, what's the difference here? What is the Rambam adding different than before? Like that they come to, according to this opinion of the Rambam, what's added here, Legabe de Gerechente b'Mesechta Erechin, in contrast to what's counted in the Gemara and Erechin, their Chet HaMesainanim, the fact that they sinned when they complained. On euch, das was euch was Yidden haben gebeten der Mann. In connection to the man, there's a third time. The very fact that they requested the food, the man, that was also considered to be testing Hashem. Und anstatt say, because the Rambam adds these 2, so instead is mashmit ein Nisayim b'Yam und ein Nisayim beim Slav. He omits one of the times mentioned in the Gemara that they tested Hashem by the Yam Suf, and one of the times that they asked for the Slav is also not counted in these 10 times. Those are the 3 opinions here. Rashi, b'Pirushi ala Torah, if in pasuk zeh esapamim is mefarish, when Rashi quotes and explains what are the 10 times, so he says Shnayim b'Yam, twice by the Yam Suf, Shnayim b'Man, twice with the Man, Shnayim b'Slav, twice with the Slav, v'Chulu, and so on. The rest of the times kedeise b'Mesechta Erechin, as it's spelled out in the Gemara in Erechin. V'Dedeya in Erechin. So as you see, Rashi is accepting the first opinion quoted here, which is the opinion of the Gemara in Erechin. Das was Rashi b'derech Hapshat can it annehmen wie the day von Avos Rab Nosson is move on. The fact that Rashi explaining the simple understanding of the 10 times here in the pasuk, so he doesn't accept the opinion of Avos Rab Nosson, so that's understood. Weil die 2 nisyonos from Ma'ase Koirach and Toflo Alaman, the 2 times testing Hashem that Avos Rab Nosson adds here, different than the Gemara. It includes the story with Koirach, and when they complained in Parshas Chukas. This all happened later on, after the story of the Meraglim, which is the 10th test, according to what the simple pshat of the pasuk is saying here, that Hashem is saying that now, after the Chet HaMeraglim, the Yidden have already tested me 10 times. It's being said here, after the final time with Meraglim. So that's simple. We understand why Rashi doesn't quote what it says in Avos Rab Nosson. The question though is, was nimmt dann Rashi pshute shel mikra die Idee von Masechta Erechin und nicht wie es rechnet sie der Rambam in Pirish HaMishnayos? Why does Rashi, which explains always the simplest understanding of the pasuk, accept the 10 times that are explained in the Gemara and Erechin and not what the Rambam says in Pirish HaMishnayos? Now, but Rashi rechnet nicht bakoshes amman als Nisayim. The fact that Rashi does not count the fact that Yidden requested the man as one of the times they tested Hashem is move on. That's actually understood. While Rashi pshute shel mikra halt as lechem shalu kahoigen, because in Rashi understands in the simple understanding of the pasuk that the fact that they requested bread, man, to eat, that's something that was appropriate. They had no food, as Rashi himself says this in Parshas Shlach. Und der Eibishter hat sie de facto gegeben der man der chiba. The man that Yidden received was with love. They deserved it. There, in Parshas B'Shalach, Rashi says that the slav, the meat that they requested, that was something that was inappropriate. They didn't need that. So that's understood why, in that detail, Rashi disagrees with the Rambam. However, the question is, Chet Aleph, Chet HaMesainanim, werd befedish the Tzelt Nechumish. The fact that Eden sinned when they complained in Parshas Ba'aleischa with their traveling, that's something that's explicit in the Chumash. Beis, the Nisayan Hasheni B'yam. The second time that the Eden tested, according to what the Gemara says, they tested Hashem when they came out of the Yam Suf. Vet nitamont im Pshutei Mikra. That's something that's not mentioned at all in Pshutei Mikra. So according to Rashi, it would be logical to remove this one time of the Yam Suf and replace it with what is clear in the pasuk, the Chet HaMezainanim. V'adarab, on the contrary, from Pirish Rashi in Parshas B'Shalach, when you look at what Rashi says there in Parshas B'Shalach, Shepolton Ayam al Sfasai, that when Yidden came out of the Yam Suf, the Yam spit out the dead Egyptians on its edges, Kedei Shelo Yoimru Yisrael Kishem She'anu Chulu Kachem Chulu. So the Yidden should not complain and say that just like we are saved here, the Egyptians may have been saved somewhere else. Is muchach, so from that it's clear, as Rashi nemton, as Bepoil is nitgeven, Kenisayim Bali Yosim and Ayam. That according to Rashi's opinion, there was no test that they tested Hashem when they came out of the Yam Suf, complaining that the Egyptians may have been saved elsewhere. When Hayes Rashi's Mefarish Pshutei Mikra. So since Rashi always explains the simple understanding of the pasuk, Rashi should be counting what is clear in the pasuk when they complained in Parshas Ba'aleischa. And not count the second time when they tested Hashem by the Yam. Because this is Kipirish Rambam. That is what, like as the Rambam himself says, the Rambam says, I'm counting the 10 times that are all clear in the pasuk. And not as Rashi says that I'm quoting from what it says in the Gemara in Erechin. Another question here is, since Rashi does count 2 times the Eden tested Hashem by the Yam, so then it would come out as zusammen mit dem Chet HaMezainanim, welches Divrei HaKosef. Also counting when the Eden complained, which is clear in the pasuk, then schon gewend 11 Nisyanis by Midbar, bisman Chet HaMeraglim. So then there's really 11 times the Eden tested Hashem, including the final one with the Chet HaMeraglim. So why is the pasuk saying, according to Rashi, in the simple pshat of the pasuk, that it's only 10 times? Additionally, we need to explain the following. In Avos der Rab Nosson verbindet kama v'kama von die Asar Nisyanis, and so in Avos der Rab Nosson he connects some of the 10 times Yidden tested Hashem mit dem pasuk with what it says in the beginning of Chumash Devarim, Eila Dvarim Asher Divrei Moshe Gomer. These are the words that Hashem, that Moshe, that he spoke to Yidden when he rebuked Yidden. Bamidbar, Ba'arava Gomer, V'dizav, referring to different places that Yidden tested Hashem and sinned. As wären nirmaz in die Nemen, was wären dort ausgerechnet im pasuk. That some of these 10 times mentioned here are also hinted in these names of places that the pasuk is saying in the beginning of Dvarim. Al derech zeh Sfaranim an Da'ama and Sifri. Similar, there's an opinion in the Sifri that says, as the Allah, Asar Nisyanis, welche wären ausgerechnet im Masechta Erechin, all 10 tests that are mentioned in the Gemara in Erechin, Beis B'Yam, Chulu, as counted in the Gemara there, Zenem Merumes in the pasuk Anal. They're all hinted in the pasuk in the beginning of Chumash Devarim. On Azay learned Rashi, now Rashi also understands and explains as the pasuk Eila Dvarim Gomer, that this pasuk of Eila Dvarim is Kailul Divrei Techachas. These are words of rebuke of Moshe Rabbeinu to Klal Yisrael. On as Manakan Kol Hamakaimis Sheikh Isu Lefnei Amakim, and Moshe Rabbeinu counts all the places that Yidden angered Hashem. Und danach is Rashi mefared die Chatoim welche wären dann nirmaz. But then Rashi goes on to spell out what are the sins that are being hinted here in the names that the pasuk says. V'zel Shani, and Rashi says as follows. What does Bamidbar mean? Ma sheikh isuhu Bamidbar she'amru mi t'miseinu v'gaimer. They angered Hashem in the Midbar when they complained and says, who should give that we should die here? That's in the beginning of Parshas B'Shalach. Ba'arava, what does that hint to? B'shvil ha'arava shechotu b'Baal Pa'er chulu. That refers to the sin of Baal Pa'er, which actually happens much later on after the story of the Meraglim. Moil Suf means al mashahimru b'Yam Suf chulu. Standing by the Yam Suf, the Yidden complained there as well. Bein Para u'bein Teufel v'Lavan shetaflu al amon shu Lavan. They complained about the mon, and it's hinted in the word Lavan because it was white. By Midbar Paran al Yedei Meraglim, and they complained, they sinned at Midbar Paran, which is the sin of the Meraglim. And then v'chatzeiros b'machloikes shel Kairach, that hints to the machlokes of Kairach, and v'dizav hints to ha'egel, the fact that Yidden sinned with the egel. Those are the things that Rashi spells out that is hinted in the pasuk in the beginning of Chumash Devarim. Now, if Izek komtais, according to this, it comes out as in der pasuk b'Dvarim wären gerechnet nit dieselbe Inyanim wie die Asar Nisyanis im Masechta Erechin. Was Rashi bringt the Parsha Seneca now, that there's certain things that are being left out here. The list that Gemara in Erechin says, and Rashi understands that that's what our pasuk is referring to 10 times, so some of them are being left out in the beginning of Chumash Dvarim. So the question is, why doesn't Rashi explain there in Dvarim, like the opinion in Sifri, other Avos der Rab Nosson, or similar in Avos der Rab Nosson, as the Divrei Techoche from Moshe Rabbeinu, zene bescheiches zu dieselbe Chatoim, was auf Zeh der Eibishter Mechiach, wenn die Jeden sagen dig, weil Yenasa ist diese erste Pomme. Why wouldn't we say that, like it says here, that Hashem is saying that Yidden have tested me 10 times, then in Chumash Dvarim, when Moshe Rabbeinu is rebuking Yidden, it includes all of those same 10 times that Hashem speaks about, that Hashem speaks of over here in Parsha Shlach. Including additional times, though, over there in Dvarim, because there are additional sins that happen after the Meraglim. But until the time of Chet HaMeraglim, why wouldn't Rashi explain in Chumash Dvarim that it's hinting to everything that is being included here in the Esther Pa'amim mentioned in our Parsha? So there must be a difference in the context of what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying in Dvarim and what Hashem is saying here regarding these 10 times. What is that difference? In Rosh and Rashi, the Parsha saying Gufa is it moving. To take a closer look at the language of Rashi in this week's Parsha here, how Rashi explains the 10 times, it's not understood as follows. Aleph, number 1, Vibalt Rashi is saivin it maitek b'pirushay alet senes yenis. As you see, Rashi is not quoting over here all 10 of the times they tested Hashem. Now, as there was will wissen beprotis. Rather, Rashi says, if you want to know exactly what they are, it's not relevant to all spell it out here for the understanding of the pasuk. The Fab bringt is nicht da, and therefore he doesn't quote it all. Can es wissen from Masechta Erechin? He can know it by looking in the Gemara in Erechin, as Rashi says, v'chulu k'deisa b'Masechta Erechin. Erechin, that is. So if that's the case, Favos rechenter ois sechs. So why 6 of them does he mention? Und schreibt nicht bekitzer shnayim b'yam v'chulu. Why doesn't he just begin starting to just so you know where the quote exactly is in the Gemara? 2 by the yam v'chulu k'deisa b'Masechta Erechin. Why does he quote 6 of them? Beis, another question on the language of Rashi here is, the Lashon in Masechta Erechin is, the language in the Gemara there actually is different than Rashi. Shnayim bayam, then Shnayim bamayim. The second set of 2 that the Gemara brings in is the 2 in connection to water. And then Shnayim b'mon and Shnayim b'slav cholo. Rashi b'pirusho yober, hipt iber diverte Shnayim b'mayim. Rashi is quoting 6 of them that are mentioned in the Gemara, and he skips the 2 in connection to the water. Und er kailel in the v'chulu, and he includes it in the v'chulu and so on. Take a look in the Gemara there. That Rashi says the word v'chulu after he says the 2 of the slav. So why is Rashi skipping those 2 of the water that the Gemara actually mentions earlier? To me is noch größer, the wonder on how Rashi writes this is even greater. That einzige from the alle 10, the only one of all 10 times that Yidden tested Hashem, was the Torah sagt befetisch, as Yidden haben damit menasse gewen am Eibischen. The Torah explicitly says that Yidden were testing Hashem. It's from the Shnayim b'mayim, the Nisayim b'refidim. It's from one of the 2 in connection to the water, which was in refidim. There the pasuk uses this expression, that Yidden were testing Hashem. Und dafke dem Nisayim, der Mont nit Rashi b'pirushay from Vayanasu. One is in Kail and V'chulu. And it's this one in connection to water that Rashi does not explicitly count and mention here when he explains the pasuk Vayanasu, and he hints at just in the V'chulu, so on. Take a look in what it says in Erechin. Why is that? So seemingly we can answer the 2 questions asked there in Sif Daled as mit Zayin Zayin zum Masechta Erechin. What is Rashi's point in pointing to the Gemara in Erechin? Is Rashi oisen nit azay the andere 4 nisyanis, welche bringt nit up. The point over here is not to let you know that if you're interested in knowing what are the other 4 times Yidden tested Hashem, take a look there in the Gemara. No, rather, be'ikr, primarily, wissen welche zene die 6, welche is ja meitig. Rashi wants to quote 6 of them to clarify what these 6 are. And therefore, it's only regarding these 6 that there's a clarification necessary. In andere Wörter, in different words. B'shas the ben chomish lemikre vet lernen the pasuk vayinas ha'is yizeh upon him. When a child, a 5-year-old, learns what it says in the pasuk that Yidden tested Hashem 10 times. So it's very easy on his own. He'll look into the words in the Psuk in the Chumash and he'll see some of the times that explicitly say that Yidden sinned and tested Hashem. On Rashi darf no bavaren in the erte wo me ken machen atos. Rashi only has to clarify what the 10 times are regarding those times that you can make a mistake. Der Rebbe darf Rashi nit mefared sein schneien b'mayim. So therefore we can say that it's not necessary for Rashi to spell out the 2 times that they complained for water. Exactly for the reason, because that's something that's clear and you can see it. And similar chet egel, which is explicit and extensively in the pasuk and chet meraglim as well, that Rashi doesn't have to quote it all from the Gemara and Erechin. So what's with the 6 that Rashi does quote? Rashi is coming to clarify something about these 6 times. By contrast, this that Yidden sinned twice by the Yam, was in pasuk steht bloß eine sein. In the pasuk it only says explicitly 1 time that Yidden complained by the Yam. Muss Rashi zugeben, as eine gewen schneien by Yam. So therefore Rashi has to clarify, no, there was actually a 2nd time that Yidden complained by the Yam. Und wie sie werden ausgerechnet kedeise Masech Erechin. As the Gemara in Erechin explains what the 2nd time was. Al derech zeh by man, similar in connection to the man, Rashi has to clarify what happened by the man. There would be maybe room to say that even this, that Yidden requested the food, the man, that also should be counted as 1 time that they tested Hashem. Since it came in a manner of a complaint. As the Rambam actually says. So therefore Rashi has to clarify, that in fact, regarding the man, there was only 2 things that they tested Hashem with. As the Gemara says, as Ishnayim b'man zenen al tesiru and al teitzel, that they didn't listen to the mitzvah, not to leave over, and not to go out on Shabbos. Al derech zeh benegayet some Slav. Similar could be said regarding the Slav, that there's a clarification needed. As in the Faran Deis, there are opinions, as the Sipurim wegen dem Slav, in Pashas B'Shalach and Pashas Ba'aleischa, the story in the Chumash, about the Yidden complaining that they wanted meat and they got the Slav that are recorded both in B'Shalach and Ba'aleischa, is that in Itkin Tzvei Basundere Morais. These are not 2 different incidents. Nor Hainu Hach. They're really one and the same incident that the Torah repeats in these 2 places. The Rebbe bevarent Rashi Shnayim B'Slav. Therefore Rashi has to clarify, no. Yidden tested Hashem with the Slav twice, once in B'Shalach and once in Ba'aleischa. So this would explain why Rashi is quoting only these 6 times of the 10 tests, because there's a clarification necessary for these 6 times. However, this is a very big squeeze to explain Rashi this way. Warum? Because just like you could say that it's not clear. Whether this the Yidden are requesting the man should be counted as a test. Since bread is a basic necessity, so Yidden were not asking something of a luxury. This was deserving, this was appropriate. Was Yidden haben gefragt, ma nischte, is an asayin. So too, you can be doubtful whether this that Yidden requested water when they were in Mara, and they said, what are we going to drink? So over here, it's also a doubt whether this is considered to be a test or not. Water is a basic necessity. So Rashi seemingly should be quoting from the Gemara regarding the water, that they tested Hashem regarding the water, because otherwise I would say that that's not considered to be a test. They didn't test Hashem. This is a basic necessity, similar to bread. Al derech zeh, similar, ken veren akler tzimit afrechen and the chetam esayin and malz nesayin. There may be room to think about whether, when Yidden were complaining with their traveling in the Midbar, whether that's considered to be a test. Maybe they were being totally worn out from the traveling, and that's why they complained, and it's something which is sort of appropriate. It's not that they weren't really testing Hashem to a degree that it should qualify to be counted. And more, you can look at the other times that they tested Hashem, that maybe it's not so clear whether it should be counted or not. So therefore, it's a very big deichik to say that Rashi is quoting only these 6, because only these 6 isn't necessary to clarify. Okay, so here the Rebbe is going to give us a new understanding of how Rashi understands what it is that the pasuk, what Hashem is saying over here, Vayanasu eisi zeh eser palmim. The fact that Rashi chooses specifically the way the Gemara in Erechin says it, the fact that Rashi chooses specifically to enumerate these 6 and the rest he just sends you to the Gemara in Erechin, it's all because there's something specific that Rashi is trying to say here in what this Vayanasu eisi means. We can say that the explanation for all of this is as follows. Der Pirish Rashi da, what Rashi says here regarding the 10 times that Yidden tested Hashem, kommt behemshech zu sein Pirish gleich fardem, is a follow-up and continuing what Rashi says right before this, auf dem Wort Vayinasu, when Rashi explains what Vayinasu means, kimashmoi. Rashi says it means what it means literally. What is Rashi saying here? So the commentaries explain. As we can dem Wort Vayinasu abteitschen bemuvan shel kas. The word Vayinasu could also mean that they angered Hashem. Rashi, and therefore Rashi clarifies as Vayinasu oisi meint kemashmoi. Vayinasu means its literal meaning. Yidden haben ausgeprüft am Eibischen. They didn't anger Hashem. That's not the point there. The point there is that they were testing Hashem. They were unsure. They didn't have the proper faith in Hashem, and they were testing Him. Now, after we see how Rashi explains what Vayinasu means, is verstandig bepashtus. It's just simply understood. Favos Rashi cannot onem shittas Rambam. Why Rashi cannot accept what the Rambam says, as the chet hamisaynenim get rein cheshmer from the that when the Yidden were complaining in their travels, that this is one of the 10 times that are counted. While der chet is al pipshute shel mikra ledas Rashi, in the simple understanding of the pasuk as Rashi explains it before in Parshas Valoischa, nit gewenken inyum from Vayinasu oisi. This wasn't something that they were testing Hashem. They didn't have the full faith. Nor analila ha'eich lifrosh ma'achrei hamakim. Rather, as Rashi says there, this was a libel. They were looking for a way how to separate from Hashem. So this is a sin where they were trying to rebel against Hashem to some extent. So therefore, it can't be counted when we're talking about 10 times as a test when they didn't have the proper faith in Hashem and they were testing Hashem. So therefore Rashi instead quotes from the Gemara in Erechin, because over here it's in all these 10 times that you see that Yidden are testing Hashem. They're testing Hashem because of the weakness of their faith. Das ist euch der Tam Ashinoi von der ausgerechnete Pratim in Pirish Rashi da und in Pirish Rashi bei Parshas Dvarim. This explains the difference between what are the 10 times that are being counted here and why, when it comes to Rashi explaining what Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked Yidden in the beginning of Chumash Devarim, he omits some of the 10 times that are counted here. In unser Sedre Retzach wegen in Yanim welche zenen an Isayin. Because here, the 10 times, we're specifically focusing on those things that are Yidden testing Hashem out of a weakness of faith. In Parshas Devarim, Retzach wegen Divrei Techachim von Moshe nef Chatoim von Yidden Bechlal. There, Moshe Rabbeinu is rebuking Yidden for their sins, for sinning. Lav dafke di welche zenen an Isayin. Not specifically those times that there was a weakness of faith and they were testing Hashem. Azelache welche zenen Chatoim ikriyim ukloliyim von Deira Midbar. And there, Moshe Rabbeinu is going back to the most general times that Yidden sinned against Hashem when they were in the Midbar. And what are they? The Chet beBaal Pa'or, when they sinned by Baal Pa'or, which included Arayas and Avodah Zarah, Himru b'Yamsuf, complaining at the Yamsuf, Taflo Alamon. They complained about the Mon, Velchas is an Nenish geworden mit die Nechoshim Asrafim. They were then punished by the venomous snakes, Chet HaMeraglim, the Aved of the Meraglim and Maisa Kairach, and then the argument and fight of Kairach and Cheta Egel. So these are the most, even though there were additional times that Yidden sinned, but these are the most general Chatayim that Yidden did when they were in the Midbar. So it's a different point that we're counting here. And on the other hand, in our parsha, we're counting the 10 times that Yidden are testing Hashem because of a weakness of faith. That's the general explanation for how Rashi understands what the Vayinasu is all about, and therefore fits with what the Gemara says in Erechin. However, this is the basis of what Rashi is saying, but we still need to understand as follows. Yes, it's true, as Beroi V'Mekaimis is der Wort Vayinasu Aloshen Esayin. The term Vayinasu most times in Torah does not mean to anger, rather it means a test. However, here is Dr. Pasuk Mamshach Vayinasu Oisi Gaim. The Pasuk contains and says that Vayinasu, and then it says V'Leishamu B'Koili. You didn't listen to me, that you didn't hear my voice. As they haben bepoil nit gefolgt in Tzivri Hashem. That Yidden actually did not follow Hashem's commands. Wollt doch zu lieb dem mem massen gewähnt, zu teitschen Vayinasu oisi meloshen kas, und nit meloshen nesayin. So following what the Pasuk says afterwards, that they didn't listen, wouldn't it be more fitting here to say that Vayinasu actually means that they angered Hashem by not listening? And not to just say that they were doubtful and they didn't have the full faith in Hashem. That's not in the context of when it says V'lo shamu. They didn't listen. Now it's understood, the fact that they're testing Hashem because they're not so strong in their faith, That doesn't mean that they are not listening to Hashem's commands. They're following whatever Hashem commands, but nevertheless, at the same time, they're being doubtful. And as we can see, as Kama from the Asar and Nisyanis, a few of these times that they tested Hashem, that the Gemara counts, do not qualify for this that the Pasuk says, that they didn't listen to Hashem. They complained and they so on, but not that they didn't listen to Hashem's commands. So the question is, looking at what the Pasuk clearly says, that they didn't listen, why wouldn't Rashi say that Vayanasu actually means that they angered Hashem by not following, by not listening to his orders? So the answer for this is, and this will lead us into the wider and broader understanding of what the Pasuk is talking about here, the Hechrech from Rashi, what's bringing Rashi to say that Vayanasu means literally that they tested because they didn't have full faith, is nitno mitzadem uptight from Vart Vayanasu. It's not only the fact that that's what Vayanasu usually means, no mitzad klolus teichen. If you look at the general content of what Hashem is saying here, and now we understand. At this point, daitet Rashi on. Rashi is hinting to you, or is letting you know, durech meitig zayin die drei zuge nisyonis from Masechta Erechen. By the fact that he only explicitly mentions the three sets of the times that they tested Hashem that are said in Gemara Erechen. Kedel kaman is specifically these 6 times that Rashi chooses to mention explicitly, because they make the point of what this Vayanasu was all about, that Hashem is saying that Yidden tested him, as will be explained there. Okay, so now we need to have a broader understanding of what it is that Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu when he says that Yidden have tested me 10 times. There are a few questions here that have to be clarified on the parasha. Aleph, the first point is, Hashem says about the generation here of the people in the Midbar that sinned, that I will wipe them all out, I will drive them all out. Hat Moshe geteinet zum Eibishten. So Moshe Rabbeinu argues to Hashem and says, "V'shomu Mitzrayim gomer." The Egyptians will hear about what happened. V'omru al yeshiv aretz hazayis shomu gomer v'hem matos amazeh gomer v'omru goyim gomer mebulti yichrelas Hashem gomer. That the Egyptians and the goyim will all hear about what Hashem did, and they will say, "You know why this happened? Because Hashem cannot bring the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. He doesn't have the power to conquer the land." That's the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, he should not wipe out Klal Yisrael. This is something that needs to be explained. Wie can sein? How could it be? As Oster that time, v'omru hagoyim and bilti yicheles Hashem gomer. Besides this argument, that what are the goyim going to say that Hashem can't bring Yidden into Eretz Yisrael? Hat Moshe Rabbeinu nit gefunden kein tainus v'limut schus. Moshe Rabbeinu had no other argument and no other way to talk about the merits of Yidden. Oif mevatel sein, die sakone von Akeno und Orisheno von alle Yidden. That to save Yidden from being completely wiped out, all of Yidden, Shishim Ribei Levada Noshim V'ataf, all 600,000, which is besides the women and children, and also excluding any men below the age of 20 or above the age of 60. Moshe Rabbeinu can't find any other limit schus to save 600,000 Yidden. Is another question here is, Moshe had gebeten dem Eibishten, Shlach no la'aveno mazeh kegodel chazdecha. He requested of Hashem to forgive the Yidden because of your great kindness. You carried them from Mitzrayim until this point. Und der Rebbe hat dem Masken given. Hashem agreed und gesagt, Salachti kedvarecha. I will forgive them like your words. Isn't it move on? If that's the case that Hashem agreed, then he says, I will forgive exactly like you said. So now the question is, wie bald der Rebbe hat Zilech given the Yidden? If Hashem did forgive Yidden, was hat es geholfen b'miluah? Why didn't it go all the way? Und es ist trotzdem gewendig Gzeire in Yiru Haaretz gomer. Nevertheless, even after they are forgiven, so Hashem is not going to wipe them all out at once, but this generation here in the Midbar will not see the land. And they gradually passed away through the 40 years. Why is this the case though? If Hashem forgave them, they should all be entering into Eretz Yisrael. So to explain this, to understand what it is that Hashem is saying here to Moshe Rabbeinu, and did he actually forgive Yidden? Did he not forgive Yidden? Das was der Rebbe hat gesagt. The fact that Hashem says, as der Deira Midbar wird nicht reinkommen in Eretz Yisrael, that this generation here in the desert will not enter into Eretz Yisrael, is nicht ein Gather von an earnest study. This is not something that could be defined as some punishment that comes from the side, not related to what happened, but just as a punishment, as a consequence. Not atitzah tivis von zeichet umatzev. This is actually a natural outcome because of their sin and their condition. Why is that? Das alles, was die Meraglim haben erzählt wegen Eretz Yisrael. Everything that the Meraglim related about what they saw in the land. Die Gvure von der Yeshvei ha'aretz v'chulu. The might of the people that they saw there in Eretz Yisrael is given emes, was actually true. Azoi, as they're reingehen in Eretz Yisrael, so, and therefore the case is that to enter into Eretz Yisrael, it was only possible only if you have a very strong trust in Hashem and in His wonders. Nicht guckendig auf die Gvure von Yeshvei Aretz, not looking at the great might of the people there in the land, can der Eibishter geben jeden dem Koyach zu menatzeach sein bederech nes. Hashem can give Yidden the possibility to be victorious in a miraculous manner. That's the only attitude that Yidden can go into Eretz Yisrael. Und wie Rashi bringt the Eid, was Kalev had gesagt. And as Rashi says, what Kalev said as a response to what the Meraglim said, that we can't enter into the land. So he said, but Moshe Rabbeinu split the yam for us. And he brought us bread from the heaven. And he brought us the slav birds. So he's mentioning miracles that Moshe Rabbeinu performed for Yidden. And therefore he says, we will go up to the land, which meant even you have to climb up to heaven. Build ladders to climb up to the heaven, and go there. Will be successful in whatever he says. Which means alles ba'ofen von nisim. What Kalev is saying is, the miracle are right. That in Eretz Yisrael, naturally, it's impossible to conquer the land. But we're not dependent on nature. We see what Moshe Rabbeinu did until this point, and we're going to go there miraculously. Und das ist the Pirishat Dvarim, was der Rebbe hat gesagt zu Moshe. And this is what Hashem is telling here, Moshe Rabbeinu, in the Psukim right before it says here, Vayenas oisis esa pomim. What does it say there? Va'ad ono lo yaminu bi b'chol oisis asher asisi b'kirboy. Until when will Yidden not believe in me, with all the wonders that I've done amongst them? Akenu b'devagim. And then, therefore, Hashem says that they will all be wiped out with a plague. Which means we bald Yidden, zenen in a matzev, von lo yaminu bi b'chol oisis. If Yidden don't believe in the wonders of Hashem, zenen zaynet kenkeli zu an hagenisses. So therefore they're not open at all. They have no attitude that they can go into Eretz Yisrael believing in any miracles. That they should enter Eretz Yisrael in a miraculous manner. They don't believe in this and they're not accepting this at all. And this is also based on what we learned earlier already in Parshas B'chokaisai, B'pashtus, Pshuta Shemikra, in a very simple sense. The Pasuk says, that if you don't follow Hashem properly, so then Hashem says, I will not be there with you to the fullest extent, even including miracles. So therefore, Yidden can't enter the land. There's no place naturally for Yidden to enter. So this is all a natural outcome of their attitude. It's not just a punishment. So therefore, it's regarding this point that they didn't have a lack of faith and therefore they can't enter the land. So Moshe Rabbeinu responds and says, now this is going to cause that all the Goyim, the Mitzrayim, and all around are going to say that Hashem can't bring Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu pointing out? Why was this his argument, even though there could have been other limudei schus that Moshe Rabbeinu could say for Klal Yisrael? Since the reason why Hashem says that He will wipe out is because it all begins with the fact that there's a lack of faith here. Is doch adarabah. So Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, if that's the case regarding lack of faith, then the contrary. Wiping them all out as one, all at the same time, that the lack of faith in Hashem will only be intensified. It'll cause that all people all around will now lose their faith in Hashem to an even greater degree. That this is a result of the fact that Hashem can't deal with this. He can't bring it into Eretz Yisrael. So if what's being done here is being caused by the lack of faith, why would Hashem do something that would cause an even greater lack of faith by people? That's why Moshe Rabbeinu chooses specifically this argument, because that's what the focus here is. So what does Hashem respond? Salachti kidvarecha. I will forgive like you said. Rashi is mefarish, and as Rashi explains, b'shvil masha amarta pen yomrim mebilti yechelos Hashem. Because of this argument that there shouldn't be a greater lack of faith, that people will say that Hashem can't bring them into the land, so Hashem says they'll be brought into the land. Okay, now, however, based on what we explained, we can understand why this didn't mean now that they are going to actually enter the land. Aber die Sliche nimmt up dem Chet. Now, this that Hashem forgives removes the sin. Ubemela dem einish. It removes the punishment aspect of what there is over here that they will not be able to enter. As a soll nicht sein, that they should not be all wiped out at once. However, regarding this that Hashem says that they can't enter into Eretz Yisrael, hat die Sliche nicht geholfen. Hashem's kindness to forgive them can't change the fact that Yidden were at this time on a level where they didn't have the proper faith and therefore the ability to go into Eretz Yisrael with the proper attitude. That didn't change. Warum der Chesaron in them is kanal. What's lacking over here, as explained, it's not the fact that Hashem is looking to punish, nor das was zeindig in a matzah from lo yaminu goyim b'cholos. It's the fact that Yidden's condition is that they don't believe in Hashem's wonders. Darv zayin dem kibush b'derech hateva. So therefore they're entering the land and want to conquer it naturally. B'teva is aza goyim. Looking at it from a natural standpoint, the people in Eretz Yisrael are very mighty. On zay der deira midbar kennen it koivish in Eretz Yisrael. It's not physically possible for them to conquer the land. So that's something that doesn't change. So on one hand, yes, Hashem's infinite kindness, He forgives Yidden completely. But at the same time, though, it's impossible for Yidden to enter in the land. That explains the context of the parsha of what it's saying here. So now we come to what it says here, Vayanasu, that Yidden tested Hashem 10 times. Pikalanal is move on. So with all of this, we can understand. Favas Rashi muzdom befarish zayin Vayanasu kamashmoi. Why Rashi must explain that when it says here Vayanasu, it doesn't mean that they angered Hashem, as it would seem from the continuation of the pasuk that they didn't listen to Hashem's commands. Rather, it means literally that they were testing Hashem. Even if from the continuation of the pasuk it may seem as Vayanasu da is lashon kas, that Vayanasu means that they angered Hashem. Hayes as that they didn't listen, they didn't follow Hashem's orders. Is aber from Klalos, Teichen, a Parsha, Muchach, but looking at the general context of the whole Parsha, it's clear, as the Chesaron, from Vayanasu I see, that what was lacking here, when Hashem says that Yidden tested Him, the main point here is the fact that they lack the full faith in Hashem. As explained, this was the whole reason of why there's a decree that they can't enter into the land. It's a natural outcome of their condition. Papi said that with this we can understand. Favas Rashi is maitik nor di sechs nisyanis Masechta Erechen. Rashi quotes only 6 of the 10 of the times that they tested Hashem that the Gemara says. Valdafki in di nisyanis, because it's specifically in these 6 times is mudgish unikir. It's highlighted and it's very clear. Oivi feel as had gefelt in dem chayzik ha'amunah von Yidden. To what extent Yidden were lacking in their faith. Was Rabbi says, move on. And this explains why Moshe Rabbeinu was not successful in nullifying this decree that they should be able to enter into Eretz Yisrael. So here the Rabbi will show us more specifically what exactly it is, to what extent they were lacking in their faith, that is in the words of the pasuk Vayanasu, that they're testing Hashem 10 times. The beard in them, the explanation is as follows. In a friedige pasuk state, earlier on, when the Torah talks about the fact that Yidden don't have faith in Him, so there it says, as der Eibishter hat gesagt, ad va'ad ono lo yaminu bi b'chol ha'isas goyim. Until when will Yidden not believe in me? So it uses the term that they do not believe in me. Mashen came da. By contrast here, when it talks about the decree that they will not see the land, here that Hashem says a different expression. All the people that saw my honor and all the miracles that I performed for them, both when they left Mitzrayim and in the Midbar, here it doesn't say they don't believe in me, but it says a different expression. Vayanasu. They test me. It's not only simply that they didn't believe in me. Why is this? Why a new expression regarding the lack of faith in Yidden? The phone is Rashi Medayek. It's from this that Rashi understands as the Chet Vayanasu I see is this, that Yidden are testing the Yidden. What does this mean? In dem inyan, here regarding this point, Harber Viloya Miribistan. This is something more difficult, or something that's even worse than what it says before, that Yidden don't believe in Hashem. Was the far is da sebe, and therefore there's a cause or a reason as a fille nachtem with the Eibishter selech hidden oif zerchet, even after Hashem forgives them for their sin. Kidvarecha, and Hashem is forgiving like Moshe Rabbeinu is requesting, but nevertheless kenen zaynit koiver zayn Eretz Yisrael. Because of Vayinasu, which shows in a very unique lack of faith, therefore it's impossible for these people to come and conquer the land, which you have to rely on miracles. And what is it so much that's worse with what it says here, that they tested Hashem even more than what it says before, that they didn't believe in Hashem? So it's verstandig, so it's understood as follows. When you look at what it says in the Psukim earlier. If Yidden don't believe in all the wonders that Hashem has done between them, amongst them, then gleibt nit in die bewiesene Gettlichkeit, they don't believe in those miracles that they have already seen. Is veraneitze. So there's a solution for this. That Hashem could show for them much greater and much more wondrous miracles, and then that they'll have no choice. They'll see it so clearly that they will have to believe in Hashem. And this will bring them to believe in Hashem. And this is actually what it says in the pasuk in Shemais. When Hashem sends Moshe Rabbeinu to go to Mitzrayim to redeem Yidden, so Hashem says, and if they're not going to believe this miracle, in the first sign, I'll give you another miracle and they'll believe that. So similar here. So if Yidden are not relying on miracles, so then there's a simple solution. So if with a greater miracle, they would open their eyes and they would believe in Hashem's miracles and they could be brought into the land. So that's why the pasuk here adds and says, "Vayinasu oisi," that Yidden are testing Hashem is their matziv. Here, their condition is es retzach vegen anoshim haroyim loshen hoive es kvoidi. These are people that right now, presently, see Hashem's glory. Vesai and my miracles right now, Asher sisi b'Mitzrayim b'Midbar, that I perform here in Mitzrayim and Midbar. And while they see the miracles, they zan and are canon as the Eibishot Gemachti Isis. They see and recognize the fact that Hashem is the one performing these miracles. Und afal pikein. Yet at the very same time, they're testing Hashem, they're doubtful, that their faith is not complete. And this is 10 times that eventually it did lead to that they don't follow Hashem's orders. So if that's the case, is was wird helfen, as man wird beweisen, noch äußerst und größere v'cholo. What's going to help to show even greater miracles? As bleibt noch als amokim l'nisayim v'cholo. Yidden will still be doubtful, they'll still be testing Hashem. As we see in the past, that even while a miracle is happening, even then, they're doubting and they're complaining to Hashem. That's the main point that the pasuk here is saying with the Vayinasu, to explain why even though Hashem totally forgave Yidden, but nevertheless they couldn't enter the land. So here is where we see this demonstrated clearly regarding the 6 times that Rashi quotes from these 10 times that Rashi brings from the Gemara Erechim. On that this extent of the Yidden testing Hashem, they are expressed in these 3 categories of the times they tested Hashem that Rashi quotes. By Zay is der Dova v'hifuchai. It's only regarding these 6 that you see 2 opposites at the same time. They see a revelation of Hashem's glory and His miracles, and simultaneously, they're doubting, they're testing Hashem. In the very same time, in the very same thing itself, they're testing Hashem. What do you see here regarding these 6 things that Rashi quotes here? Regarding what Yidden complained at the Yam Suf. Was the zweite Nisayin, the second time by the Yam Suf when Yidden complained, is given b'shasa liyosam and ayam. When Yidden came out of, after the miracle of the splitting of the sea, was Yidden haben gesagt, and what Yidden were saying is, Kishem, sha'anu oilam mitzad zeh, just as Hashem performed the miracle and we came out on this side, kach mitzrayim oilam mitzad achas. So too they're being doubtful regarding this very miracle itself, that maybe the Egyptians were saved on the other side. In the selbe Zeit, when the Eibishter hat für sie gemacht im größten Nest from Kriyas Yamsuf, at the very same time when Hashem performs for them such a great miracle as splitting the sea, haben Yidden b'shas meise gufe, at that very time itself, Menasse gewend am Eibishten, they are testing Hashem und geteinet, and they argued, Efshes and an Euch, the Mitzrim gerate wird geworden. Perhaps the Mitzrim were saved as well. So we see here this point very strongly, to what degree the Yidden were doubtful, even when there's an actual miracle happening right here and now. Similar also, the Rebbe brings in the footnote regarding the first time they complained before entering into the Yam Suf, where on one hand they're crying to Hashem and they believe in Hashem, and at the same time they're complaining and saying that we're going to be buried here. Then Shnayim b'man, the two times that they complained regarding the man, al teitzu vayetzu al tesiru vayesiru, when they were told not to go out on Shabbos or not to leave over, and they did. What does we see here regarding the man? Their man is given a nes goli. The man, bread from heaven, is an open miracle. A bria chadasha, lechem and hashamayim, an absolute new creation to have bread from heaven. On in man, but nevertheless, in this man, on mitten man gufe, and regarding how you should be behaving with the man itself, haben Yidden menasse given dem Eibishten. Yidden are doubting Hashem. Der Eibishter hat angesagt, al tesiru, Hashem is saying, don't leave anything over, you're going to have what you need tomorrow. Und sie haben geprüft dem Eibishten vayesiru. And they're testing Hashem and they leave over. Der Eibishter hat gesagt, dass bei Yom Shabbos wird nicht machen dem Ness von Yeridus Haman. Und der Fall al teitzu, that on the day of Shabbos this miracle will not happen and there's no reason to not go out. Is man a reisen soda ausproven und sehen, sie the man is gegangen. Nevertheless, they go out to actually see, is this the case, to test Hashem, whether there'll be man there or not. Efshir is nicht ausgehalten, das was der Eibishter hat gesagt, dass Shabbos wird nicht machen dem Ness von Yeridus Haman. Maybe this is not actually going to be the case, and maybe there will be man. So here, within this very great miracle, they're nevertheless doubtful. Similar we see regarding the Shlach, which is also a tremendous miracle. Yidden are arguing and complaining who's going to give us meat to eat. Das heißt, what this means is, after the Yidden saw daily that they have bread from heaven. On the Shittas Rashi, and according to Rashi's opinion, if we're talking about the Slav, when they didn't complain for this, the second time, Oich Slav, they already saw the Slav that they got on a daily basis. And yet, their desire got even greater. They weren't happy with the bread they had, with the man, and they weren't happy with the Slav that they had until that point, and they wanted even more. Hat sie gekannt einfallen als Safik, they then had a doubt, and they tested Hashem, and they said, Mi yachilenu basar, who here in the Midbar could give us more meat that we want? As their basar was a villain, like in Slav Rishain, that the meat they want now, in addition to the meat earlier, can the Eibishter nicht geben. They're saying, who knows, Hashem can give it to us over here in the Midbar. So here again, we see clearly that within something which was miraculous that they experienced themselves, that Hashem is giving them the man and the Slav itself. Nevertheless, they're complaining about this. Which is not the case with the other 4 times that they tested Hashem, the Shnayim b'mayim, twice regarding the water, und Cheta Egel v'Cheta Meraglim, when they sinned with the golden calf, and by the Meraglim, is nit given the Dova v'Yifuchai in the Minyan Gufa. Here we don't see the fact that they're doubting Hashem and they don't have full faith in Hashem in a time when there's an actual miracle happening. Und the fact is Rashi saying it might be fetish, and therefore Rashi doesn't quote that explicitly. The point there is, Rashi wants you to understand what is the extent of the Vayanasu that you see in these 6 times that explains why Hashem says that yes, I forgive Yidden, but nevertheless, if they don't accept my miracles fully with full faith, they can't, there's no way they can enter the land, which could only be miraculously. Min ha'hoirois mikol anal ba'avedas Hashem. So one of the lessons we can take of all of this in serving Hashem. Men muss gedenken, we must remember, as how much one should be careful and be quick to see as the Isis was the Eibishter weiß lahaprat, that when it comes to miracles that Hashem shows to an individual und zum Klal, or shows it to all of Yidden, sollen Peil sein mit sehr ganze Starkheit. There's a reason why Hashem is showing us these miracles, and it should have its proper effect and fully. And it should have its effect also on a person's behavior. And also internally, that it should have an effect on the person. If it's the case with such a great generation, which is called the generation of knowledge in the Midbar, it was possible, as nach the Isis, after all the miracles shown to them, that nevertheless Yidden are doubtful and are testing Hashem 10 times. Allah has kama v'kama, much more so, bedore, the ikvis of the Mashiach, in a generation right before the arrival of Mashiach, when we don't have that same day, that knowledge like they had. Darf men ton und ton bis zu sein sicher, you have to make an effort and be very sure, as mot is bavarent, that this is taken care of, meaning that one should pay attention and notice the great miracles Hashem performs to an individual or to the Klal or Klal Yisrael, and take it in and take the proper belief that we have in Hashem and apply it and live by it. Und durch dem, was jeder wird sich misbeinen sein, and through this, that everybody will look and pay attention in the Isis, was der Rebbe hat getan mit Yidden als Klal, with the great wonders and miracles that Hashem did to all Yidden as a Klal. Mit jedem einem als Prat, and the great miracles that Hashem does for every individual in his private life. His beinus and enoifen, and to pay attention to this to the extent as das nennt him durch den ganzen, that this penetrates, this permeates the person through and through. Is das meichen jeden, this prepares jeden to the Knisa, Eretz Yisrael, al yedei Mashiach tzedkein, to enter to Eretz Yisrael through the arrival of Mashiach, begula, mitizva, nitzchis, by the everlasting and true redemption, she'ein achrei galus, without any exile after, u'ba'ifin kavtachas hakasav, as the pasuk promises, kimei tzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim, similar to when Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, was the Yitzia is given durch Isis, Isaisai, Asher Sisi b'Mitzrayim. The Yebishter took Yidden out of Mitzrayim with his great wonders. V'zayin, the Kod of Mamish, will be speedily in our times. Arenu neflois, Hashem will show us his wonders again.